can use, the residents can use as a dog walk, as a park space. It'll have some seating, it'll have a dog station, some landscaping. It'll actually have a very nice space. We then include provided for our retention area on that western side as well to create further separation between any residential uses adjacent to us in this facility. Coming around to the front side of the building, Brent Wood is going to speak a little bit about the architecture. But again, this is very front facing to Broadway. Again, we're not asking for any variances, any relief from the code. We've met and been compliant with every portion of it, from building placement to parking spaces to landscape requirements. So from top to bottom, we're consistent with the requirements. It really works in two sides. This is kind of the public side of the building. So if you're going to come into the showroom consists of really this main portion of building that faces Broadway. This is kind of the public parking zone that you would come in, park, enter into the showroom, and then you could come out to the exterior boat display area that's also facing or along Broadway and 12th on the north. From an access point for those, for boats coming here for service or delivery, they'll be accessing from 12th, coming into the property and then looping into the service area, which is again kind of in the center of the site. So it's like completely put into the middle of the property on purpose to really minimize, again, the activity that would occur there. We have the boat display area. We have some boat storage that's going to be located along the kind of in the western portion of the property. And we have site signage that's going to be located on each of these primary corners. So it's a great opportunity to beautify Broadway. Again, if you're, the conditions that are out there today are very much often curb, a 5-foot sidewalk, and then immediately a fence or some type of storage that's going on. This is going to be a nice improvement. The sidewalk will be widened, so we'll have a much stronger pedestrian access along the frontage to an 8-foot wide sidewalk. Then there's a nice, it ranges anywhere from, I think it's 13 to 12 feet of landscape area that then is going to be off the backside of the sidewalk to really beautify that entire stretch. With that, I'm going to stop talking for a second, introduce Mr. Brent Wood, who's our architect, to touch on the design.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Members of the board, my name is Brent Wood. I'm the architect for the project. As with Brian, I'll keep it brief because I'm sure a lot of this information has been reviewed before. But Brian, how do I access the actual rendering, the three-dimensional view? The elevations, the building elevations that you see here, they don't really speak to the layering and the movement in the building. So I kind of think the three-dimensional view maybe tells the story a little bit better, because the idea is that this is a full, thank you. This is a full service boat dealership and service center, but the thought was, to present the building to Broadway, because that's where most of the vehicular movement is. That's where the building's going to be really seen from. And the building's not really going to be seen flat like those elevations. The building will be seen generally people traveling north to south or south to north. So the idea was to present the dealership to Broadway and let the building sort of fade back behind the boat displays and the landscaping and the fencing, so that the service side of the building, which is really not the pretty side, that's where the necessary activities occur, working on boats, dropping off boats, would be sort of in the middle of the site, as Brian said. So the idea is to present a modern type building that speaks to movement. We're selling boats and has quite a bit of transparency to display the product that would be attractive for the passersby. We made sure that the building complies with the zoning criteria, which was, frontage on the primary facade, that it's accessible from Broadway. But again, if back to the site plan, the traffic patterns aren't from Broadway. So all of our traffic is accessible from side streets to keep the traffic moving on Broadway. And the building provides transparent windows, vertically oriented windows. And furthermore, the facade treatment itself is also vertically oriented, also required by code. We've incorporated a number of decorative cornices and building sight lines to try to accent the horizontal and vertical lines of the building and break it up and articulate it for the human scale. It's a big building. There's going to be boats inside of it. We do want it to be relatable to the humans, the people. That really is what I have to say, unless there are any questions for me. But I think the building presents very nicely from Broadway and fades back where we wanted it to, and that was the idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe that would conclude our presentation. If you don't mind giving 1 second just to scroll through and get back to, it does, look at that. So again, appreciate your time this evening. As Mr. Richards mentioned, we're all here, happy to answer any questions that you have, but appreciate your support this evening. Thank you.
Yes.
Staff received written correspondence from Ms. Evelyn Harris Clark prior to her resignation.
Right.
And so if it pleases the board to allow her to speak on each item, she provided notice that she wished to provide comment on each item, so
Absolutely.
Would you do her 3 minutes, or are you allowing?
it would be 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Public comment time.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
And so this is for the abandonment, the first item.
Everything in regards to the,
Well, you only have 3 minutes, so because you provided comments on each item, you have 3 minutes, I guess, for each item.
Item.
But not together. So we haven't read your other items. So if you wish to speak on item A, if not, we can move on and wait for the next item. But your comment card referred to each.
I think what I want to say is just to get everything out. And if it is now, I could do that.
Pleasure of the chair. If the board will want to go ahead and just hear all of our comments together.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
out of respect for her loyalty to the board, I think we should honor her request.
We could put it to a vote just to make sure, because I agree also.
Just do it by consensus.
We agree.
Okay?
Thank you, board. It's rather fragmented, so everything I have to say just to get it out at once. Good evening to the planning and zoning staff and board members. My name is Evelyn Harris Clark. I'm at 133 West 11th Street. I am a homeowner who received the notification regarding the public hearing on the applicant's ordinances and resolutions request to develop and construct a 2-story boat dealership with an outdoor storage facility near our gateway, also into the city of Riviera Beach. The applicant did not speak with me. Perhaps they spoke with people 10, 15, 20 years ago who are no longer part of this community, but there are residents who are impacted by this project who are here tonight. Park Manor, Lakeside, and other residents will be greatly impacted by another warehouse facility being built in Riviera Beach. This project, right smack in an established residential neighborhood, City Gateway, near the future CRA housing and mixed use phases 1, 2, and 3, and across from Marina Village, phase 1 and 2. My home and the future CRA's plan to develop approved high-end affordable housing will be negatively and financially impacted, and so much our quality of enjoyment impacted by another warehouse. Currently, 10th and 11th Street residents are squeezed between and out multiplied by commercial warehouse storage facilities. It is a historical trend that warehouse facilities are generally built in low-income neighborhoods and communities of color across our nation. I'm not low income, however. I was blessed to find my home renovated and live in a home across the street from the Intercoastal. My family, neighbors, and city staff dedicated over 9 years putting together strategies, having this neighborhood added to being one of the safest areas in Riviera Beach. The applicant has acquired their property at significant investment, that I understand. And I really want the applicant to hear me and to hear me clearly. I'm clear there is nothing the city, the commissioner, or the board can do to halt the marine industry from purchasing parcels of residential land and solidifying Riviera Beach as a marine base of operation. And Riviera Beach having a true reimagined downtown area is probably not going to happen. In view, How do current, future residents and commercial businesses coexist is the question. I offer for consideration to the board these conditions by the few homeowners to consider, and I hope the applicant will be amenable to these conditions. First of all, I just saw in the presentation an aluminum fence. Absolutely not in my neighborhood. Build an 8-foot decorative concrete wall around their building or either from 11th Street, E Avenue, and 12th Street. When residents look out our windows, walk or drive by, we don't want to see unsightly boat storage. We don't want to see trucks. We don't want to see equipment warehouse facility. No aluminum fencing. Safe Harbor and Viking in the Lakeside community has heard this from those residents, and they accommodated that request by those residents to construct an 8-foot concrete stucco decorative fence. No aluminum fence on my street. I want the applicant to go beyond the standard-based landscaping package. Looking at they're going to have a boat repair operation on that is very clear. There should be a plant, 3-tier ornamental trees and shrubbery around the decorative wall to enhance and complement the neighborhood with regards to the future $325,000 per unit townhouses that are going to be built by the CRA. We want to make sure that people who move in that neighborhood aren't looking at a warehouse when they get up in the morning looking out their windows. Also, too, the CRA is going to build apartments in that same area. Safe Harbor and Viking have taken this approach to coexist with their residential neighborhood facility build-outs. So I'm expecting the applicant to do the same. I want the signage that face the Broadway corridor. It could be low-hanging and non-obtrusive, and it should be signage that complements the neighborhood block and Marina Village. Residents should be asked to give our thoughts and approval. A community park, I was told, was going to be directly across the street. Maybe now it's going to be on the side where the project is going to be. But in view, if they're going to add value and bring a small open green park and consider that there is going to be the CRA housing there and to appease current homeowners, that would be great. The applicant should have it be upkept by the applicant or work out collaboration where the city will maintain the upkeep. This is a very similar offering being presented to the Lakeside residents by Safe Harbor and Viking Yachts to coexist. Lastly, I want to understand and ensure to configure how the trucks and cranes will deliver or remove boats, and they will not prohibit blocking residents from reaching their homes during everyone's business working hours. Unfortunately, this was a problem in the past, and that involved rental tenant had to go find another warehouse facility elsewhere. I see again that there's a boat service area. I'm concerned about the noise because I didn't hear about that until tonight. And also too, the warehouse, in my opinion, looks like a warehouse. I understand the applicant has been working with city staff in terms of having it complement the CRA's townhouses, which has a Bermudian style to it. This looks just like a warehouse. So they really need to work with the staff and the CRA to get this warehouse to blend in with the neighborhood. Now, the applicant has as much at stake as the existing and future residents to sustain all of our financial investment values. And if absentee landlords or homeowners are not contributing to the upkeep of the neighborhood, that applicant can voice their concerns to code enforcement, because certainly myself and the residents here who live in that area, if we don't see the applicant upkeeping their part of the bargain, being good neighbors, we're going to be complaining to the staff of the city and code enforcement. And I'd like to say too that in communicating with past residents, the only people who are on that street I'm probably one of 2, maybe 3 homeowners. The other homeowners are slumlords. I'm not real sure, but Tim Street, I hope it doesn't, but I'm told that Tim Street from the cul-de-sac all the way to the railroad tracks will go away. My home bumps up against Tim Street. I'm not sure in the next 2, 3, 5 years if my home is even going to be existing on 11th Street. I do know that the CRA is putting up their phase 1, 2, and 3 of residential homes, townhouses, mixed use, and the city has been pushing back to certain people to maintain their financial investment. I'm not sure what I'm going to look like on 11th Street, not sure what my neighbors are going to look like on 10th Street. But right now, I just want to deal with the applicant, and I hope that they're taking everything that I've said in consideration. And I thank the board for your time and consideration regarding the public's voice on this applicant's development package. And as you vote, if you can take my recommendations into consideration, because again, this is Lakeside, they're dealing with the same thing, and those developers are really working hard to appease those homeowners so that everybody can coexist. Thank you so very much.
Ms. Clark, why don't you submit a copy of that to them so they can kind of, you said a lot, and maybe they can take it into consideration like we're gonna have to do tonight.
It's a good idea. Thank you, Ms. Shepherd.
Thank you.
Certainly will.
Thank you, thank you. Good idea.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. You're definitely going to be missed on part of the Planning and Zoning Board. We really appreciate your professionalism and your concern and your love for this city. I'm going to miss you definitely for your skills and your knowledge that you gave to this board, and thank you for tonight. Thank you.
Chair, we have another comment from Ms. Phyllis Swiley. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good evening to the planning board and all the people in their respective places. I can be very short and quick because I think Ms. Evelyn Clark has covered the bases. And I would just like to say ditto, with the exception of a couple of things. I am the property owner to the east of her. I have a double lot there where I have residential rental there. I would like to say that it is my hope and prayer that she does not include me with slumlording. I don't consider myself a slumlord, and my family has been there for over 30 years. But I have some of the very same concerns, and I think she has done an excellent job in presenting that before you tonight. So I will not bore you with further comment on that. But I would like to say one thing. You talked about the transportation and keeping the traffic off of Broadway. And in my mind, that means the impact of 11th Street and Avenue E. And my question is, will the traffic that your warehouse or your boat dealership, or whatever you want to call it, will the existing roads be sufficient? I personally don't think so, but how is that being addressed? My concern is the roads, 11th Street and Avenue E, and how is that going to impact my property? I personally feel that what's going on here is the residential units that are in the area. I think there's a final plan somewhere that I'm not being made aware of, that it won't exist anymore. And I know the CRA is planning to build the townhomes. And at this point, I thought something would have started by now. I question that, to be honest with you. In consideration of the rest of that block has been purchased by some other developer or something. And I'm just wondering what will happen to where I am, where Ms. Clark is, and that entire block. So those are my concerns, is also the roads, because I don't think the existing roads are going to be able to accommodate the traffic or the type of trucks and the equipment that's going to need to be moving through with that type of marine equipment. And those are my comments.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
may I ask Ms., well, I call her Sweeley, y'all got to overlook me. Ms. Sweeley, where is your property?
Adderley, huh?
Sweeley Adley, okay, I'm getting there.
My husband wants the Adderley apartment.
Sweeley Adley,
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
Where is your property located? Because I was over there today. Is it a vacant lot or is something?
No, they're it's a double lot, and I have a duplex and a single-family home on the property.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm next door to Ms. Clark.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
okay, thank you. I was looking for it today. Thank you very much.
Any more comment cards?
That's it, Mr. Chair.
All right, so we'd like to have questions and suggestions by the board.
I would like to see the applicant come up and answer some of those questions.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I just wanted to add from the staff perspective, we did receive two public comments prior to this hearing to the negative
Are the residents,
from residents, correct?
are they read into the record or?
No, we'll include them in the backup at the end of the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity here, just to kind of touch on a couple of the items. Appreciate the comments. And something that we want to address, if it's possible, could that presentation be put back up? It would help to sort of maybe explain a little bit of how we anticipate the site operating, so that make sure we're clear. Perfect, thank you. I think that to begin with, just discussing the fact that, yes, we understand that there is a residential community and character to our west, which is, west of Avenue E. This property itself is not residential. It's land use, its zoning is commercial and has been commercial for quite a long time. It's intended to be developed for commercial business opportunities along the Broadway corridor, which again is in keeping with the vision of the master plan. And so again, if you come back to that zoning designation map, this is the existing zoning. And so if I can point to Broadway, right? Broadway, and this is our block. All of the property facing Broadway is either downtown core on either side, downtown industrial, again, not residential, industrial to our south. The western half of our property is downtown general. Then across, where actually the residential units are being built, is also downtown general. And all along E is actually designated and earmarked for some level of more commercial activity than necessarily residential activity. So understanding what the goals, the way the comprehensive plan designations were placed on the property, as well as zoning designations that were done by this city, was to allow and accommodate for commercial development. But again, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working with and trying to accommodate our neighbors. And so, as I mentioned, as I was doing this presentation earlier, we had been well aware of the residential development that was being proposed by the CRA along Avenue E. Again, that came or was brought to us as a desire of how can we begin to mitigate the concerns that those residents might have, not only the ones that will be directly adjacent to, but I think for your neighborhood and the residents that live a little bit further on 11th, that what the concerns would be. And so again, we did create the opportunity to do this, the greenway along this western edge, to create that park space that will be available to the public. As I mentioned, we talked about adding the retention area. One thing I would suggest that we'd be happy to do, we could look at that landscape plan. We could look at ways to bolster that landscape plan. and add that into our plan as we move forward to city council, if that would be an added condition or request that we could work with the community on and ourselves, and we could work on bolstering that landscape to eliminate any real concern from visibility or just really just the visibility side of it. From the access, that was a good point that was brought up about, the roadways in 12th and 11th and how are those being utilized? Again, we have no curb cut along Broadway. That is not permissible within the code for us to access this property from Broadway. We have to do it from secondary streets, so access is only permitted within your code on either 12th or 11th. So again, we provided for the access that would be along 11th. We have one curb cut here and one curb cut here. The expectation and intention is, with all the traffic studies and everything that we've done, is that the access is always going to be from Broadway. Almost, I'd say more than 90% of the clientele will be coming from Broadway, would access on 11th, would enter into the parking lot here, park in this parking lot. They would then leave by the same driveway or this driveway itself, go back out to Broadway and go. So there shouldn't be an interaction or engagement into the residential community for the folks who are visiting the site. On the service side, it's the same way. We have two access points. If you are bringing a boat or there's a delivery, they're going to come into the property. If they're coming in for service, they're going to come into this facility here, and then they would leave again back out to Broadway. So again, the expectation is not that we're bringing traffic and headaches, let's call it, into the residential community. We do know that there most likely will need to be some improvements to, we're going to be doing some work along the roadway here. The existing pavement is not in a great ideal situation, and the drainage, and there's some improvements that need to be done along 11th and also likely on 12th. But they're minor. I think the roadway, the right-of-way, the capacity of those roadways are all proven to be well within the thresholds that are required for this this type of development.
Mr. Chair, could you hold up 1 minute?
Yes.
Repeat to me about the drainage now. Are you responsible for the drainage or the city?
But we're responsible for our drainage for our property, for this site itself. We're connecting into a system that the city it maintains. What I'm saying is this roadway along here, if you've driven past it, you've driven down it, it's going to have to require a little bit of improvement for us to tie into it and connect to it. But ultimately, the drainage that's required for these roadways is already in place. It's already within the system.
So you don't have to do any update to that?
Not that I'm aware of. I think we're maybe improving the catch basin. But as far as actually improving or expanding the retention requirements, that's what we have our drainage retention on the western side. So we are capturing our water before it goes off-site. So none of our, let's call it post-development, right after we build it, there will be no more water leaving the property than would leave in the existing condition. That's a requirement of the permitting through South Florida Water Management District, and something obviously we'll have to go through your engineering department for review and approval before this could be built. But our retention is going to hold our water.
Will you be washing boats, or you said, I think I heard someone say you're going to be working on the boats there?
There's a maintenance component to the facility, right? It's like a boat dealership, an auto dealership. There's going to be a maintenance component. Those boats are under warranty. They can come back to the facility to be maintenance. That would occur. Again, it has an indoor component, so boats can come in. There's double bay opportunity for those boats to be serviced inside the building. And then there is one bay where those boats can be backed up. And so really the work occurs internal to this open. It can, big bay doors that can open up on either side, both the north and the south, and be accessed and worked on. Yes, there will be boat washing. There will be maintenance that occurs interior to that portion of the site.
How big are those boats? How big are the boats?
Yeah, that's a question I don't know if I can answer. Up to 41 feet.
Kind of large, aren't they?
There are
Yeah.
definitely, I think, both, just industry in general, the boat industry, those boats are all getting larger and larger. There's no doubt about that. But again, we have more than adequate space on this property to accommodate for it. That's the beauty of being able to do what's being proposed here, is creating a footprint, creating a plan, creating a circulation on this piece of land that makes sense and can make sure that, those larger boats and can be dealt with appropriately, rather than being crammed on smaller parcels that you see, not just in your community, but in other communities.
I don't like it. I'm gonna be honest with you, because I live on 23rd Street and those boats come down this residential street. I think with the 4 engines, or whatever you call the things, is this what it's gonna be, that big, these big boats coming with the big engine, 4 engines, 3 engines, or whatever?
There will be
On this
certain.
piece of, I can understand what Ms. Clark is talking about, because it's over in Lakeview. It's not too much you can do. But now we're crossing over. I'm kind of upset because Reimagine, I know that this is your property, but I'm just having some real issues that we continue to want to go to Reimagine and break these boat yards down here. We don't want to do no entertainment. I know it's not your fault, but I'm just sounding off. Mr. Chair, I'm through.
Yeah,
Yes.
I still didn't hear anything about a wall. With those new townhomes coming there, I wouldn't want to spend $300,000 to look at a boatyard.
Right, so if that's a consideration this board would feel would be beneficial to those residents, I think it's something that we could agree to look at, is on that western property line, or the western area there. Again, you're gonna have the park space that's exterior to that wall, but if we needed to place a wall, we would place it somewhere in this vicinity here. It's where we're proposing the fence to be. So if the request is that we look at that western property boundary and we can place a fence in that, I think that, or I'm sorry, a wall, maybe in lieu of the fence there, that would certainly create that visual barrier. I would have to ask Mr. Sermons, is an 8-foot wall permissible, or is it limited to 6? I don't know what the city's code limits it to.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
For commercial districts, 6 foot is the maximum for walls.
How tall would is this the part where we're gonna go through the questions with the board? Can we start that now, or are we just waiting till? Yeah, because it seems like we already asking questions already.
You got started, you can pick it up.
Yes. Okay, do we have any questions? Because I kind of wanted to go at the end.
What was the landscape going to look like on 11th Street? I mean,
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
you have any visual of the landscape on 11th Street? Or could you describe it? How
I could
high?
describe it, yes. Actually, I have a plan here. You really have. So you can see it's kind of graphically, oops, I'm sorry, went the wrong way. So again, along 11th Street, so you have, if you're familiar with 11th Street right there, right now, it's the pavement and it's kind of some sand and a little bit of sod, but there's really, nothing along that edge. We are proposing that there be a 5-foot sidewalk along the edge of the roadway from once you come into the parcel. You're gonna have anywhere from probably from the back of the sidewalk to the fence line. You would have approximately, looks like about 8 feet or so. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. 11th, not 12th. 11th down on this side. It's somewhat similar in the fact that here along 11th Street, you actually have a fairly large swale, right? That's the drainage swale that exists there. So it's a sodded area that will not be impacted. You have the sidewalk. Then interior to the sidewalk is where we have our landscape buffer, which would be planted with a hedge along the entire length. There will be gates in both of these locations so that at nighttime, those would be closed, open during operating hours. And then so there's hedge, then the fence is behind that hedge. So again, the fence will be hidden from the street. And then there's trees that are placed, I believe it's about every 25 feet on center or so. And we've got a variety of, it looks like we've got a couple of live oaks.
Security?
I'm sorry?
Security? Do you have security?
So the property would be completely fenced in, albeit we discussed the wall on the western side. Gates again along at each driveway. So the site would be completely secured during the nighttime hours.
What will be your start and ending time for your service?
Current operations are 8:30 to 5:30. We presume it would maintain the same.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? Just real quick, where would the CDC with the new building, the housing development that they were talking about, can we just point that out real quick of where that's going to be at here?
Avenue E.
So right on the west side.
Yeah.
I would clarify that the project that has come before the board already is actually facing 11th Street.
Oh, sorry, right.
They have a phase 2 that they have planned that will be facing Avenue E that has not been processed by staff or presented to the board yet. But what is approved is a strip of townhomes facing 11th Street.
That's the western end.
The second block. Right, yeah, right that area.
On the north side of the street.
Here,
Yes,
here we go.
that location.
Ms. Burgess, you have any questions?
I do. My first two questions are for staff, just in reference to Mrs. Clark's remarks. I'd like to have a copy of those because I looked through the packet and I didn't see where we had been provided with a copy of those comments. Also, the resident who submitted the two comments, was it in reference to this item 7A through D?
It was in reference to this item. One of them was Ms. Clark and the other was a different resident. But those were the two that were received. And this was not in response to this meeting being advertised, but in the past probably 3 months, staff began to get some community feedback and we got those two.
So we heard Ms. Clark's tonight. We haven't heard the other one prior.
Correct. I could read it into the record if that's
Yes,
the
I
desire.
would
Okay.
like that.
Just one moment, please. I apologize. I'm having some internet issues here, but as soon as I'm able to pull it up, I can request permission to read that from the chair, if that's okay.
Okay, no problem. So the other question is for the applicant. I just want to, if you could come up and show us on your plans, the parcels that are impacted, because I've looked through this packet and I've seen a couple different places where there's varying numbers of parcels on certain pages, like some they're duplicated. So if you can show me the page from your expertise and what you're submitting, the true number of parcels impacted for this area.
You mean that the number of parcels of land that are
Correct. your
accumulated
proposal.
in the
Correct.
proposal? Actually, Mr. Sermons had a better graphic that showed the property appraiser's background. Right, if you could help me out there, that would be great.
Like even I'm looking on page 103 of 191, and there are 17 listed, but the first two are duplicates of each other.
So here, again, I know it's hard to see, it's a little small, but this shows the site location, and obviously this is Palm Beach County Property Appraisers identification of all the different parcels. So I believe there's, forgive me, I'm not looking at that information immediately. I think it was 18 total parcels of land.
Can you go to in the packet and show us so we can see those parcels and look at them? You don't have anything in your presentation?
I did not include anything specifically in it. Like, you want to look at them individually?
Yes, I want them up on the screen so we can look at them and make
But
sure there's no
This
duplicates.
represents, all the green lines represents each individual parcel that,
Yes, I understand that. I want to see the actual PCN numbers.
oh, the PCN numbers. Well, I think we'd have to,
The staff presentation had a list of the PCNs in it, if
They're in
you're
the
able to bring that up.
package.
beginning. Oh, there they
There
were.
you go.
Okay, so there you have 18 listed. Yes, so the first two are the same. They're the same, they're duplicate. Because again, I'm looking from page
If-
103 of 191.
Another resource for that actually is on the site plan. The site plan that is part of the packet exhibit lists each individual parcel control number that's part of the application.
So you have duplicates on here as well?
No, we do not on the site plan, not in our application documents. Those, we have 17 listed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Because 12 and 13 also look like duplicates in 1 and 2.
If you would like, I could share, there is a site plan, I believe, in your packet, in the site data table that is part of the application. Identifies the 17, there's no duplicates.
So
This is,
what you're saying is what you have up on the screen now, there's no duplicates there?
no, I'm not saying that. It appears that there are duplicates. But that's, I think, Mr. Sermons, I think there is obviously a little bit of a typo in there, but.
Okay, so whose end is this typo on? Is it the staff you're saying or from your application?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
What's on the screen is the staff presentation that was put together in preparation for this meeting, but the materials in the packet would be more accurate. So if there's a typo up here, I would take credit for that. I may have hit the wrong button while I was creating this slideshow, but the materials that were reviewed is what's in your packet.
Okay,
Apologies for that confusion.
so for the record, the area impacts 18 parcels,
It's 17,
17? Okay,
17 parcels.
all right. Thank you. Yes, actually, on this exhibit, it states 15. But all of these are the exact same PCN numbers. On this exhibit, page 8 of 191, all of the PCN numbers are the same. And then it lists the owner, all the owners are the same, JS 12 Real Estate Holdings, LLC, but the addresses are different. So 15, 17, and then this Exhibit A. Am I looking at this wrong, Chair? Do you have a copy of this as well? I can pass it down.
Yes.
Maybe it's my eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, that exhibit's coming from where?
I passed it down, but it's on page, it's early on in the
Yes, I saw
packet.
it earlier, but like the numbers were cut off.
Well, I counted, the PCNs always consist of 17 digits, and I counted 17 for each one. 17 numerical property control number. Those are my questions. I mean, if it's typo and it's double, and you're attesting to the fact that there's 18 impacted, that's what I needed to clarify. So that's what
17
you're
is,
telling
right,
us.
17 is the number that
Yeah, that number
we
is
have
due.
included within the application and on our site plan data table, identifying each of the parcels that are impacted. And then in addition to those 17 parcels is the right-of-way area that is being abandoned and then incorporated into the project site. That makes up the total of, I think it's 4.01 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I have a couple questions also. See, Alan, you have any questions? You got? Okay. All right, a couple questions I have. I guess we'll start with the city. Is this recommendation coming from the consideration that we will be having Reimagine Rivera Beach along that corridor for the downtown area? And is it the city's recommendation that this will not impact our downtown area if that comes to fruition?
The staff's recommendation is based on what's in the city's comprehensive plan and land development code for zoning. When the city wrote its code, it did contemplate there being a concentration of marine industry uses in this area. So much so that in the downtown sections of the code, it lists these uses and makes special accommodations to facilitate these types of uses being along Broadway and being in this area of the city. So it was envisioned that this stretch of Broadway would incorporate marine uses along with further up the corridor, our commercial walkable areas. So for those reasons, it does require marine industries to have fences and display along the roadway, but it does also require that they have at least for, if I'm not mistaken, a quarter of their frontage, have a two-story building along the street so that we're still creating that kind of pedestrian realm when you're walking down the street. So our code is supportive of this use, and we did have several rounds of back and forth to make sure the building they did design met those requirements of the code. But yes, staff's recommendation is based on the fact that the comp plan and the land development code is supportive of marine industries in this area and promotes them.
Okay, so I understand the point of having staff recommendation before the legal reasons and for planning and zoning reasons. What I'm more speaking about for the city of Rivera Beach, as far as I'm with Ms. Shepherd on the point to where we have a lot of marine industry on the east side, right? Now it's coming on the west side of Broadway, right? And it looks like it's a great facility, looking at how everything is set up and everything like that. And I have any issue in what you are trying to develop. But for the city's future, is this something that the city will recommend for our city to be able to have coming into the future? If we are planning on building on Avenue E, is this something that would be conducive for our growth of the city?
One thing that I don't believe came up in either of the presentations is Mariner Marine, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, already operates in the city, if I'm not mistaken, a couple blocks north of here. And what they're attempting is to move their operation to this location that has more space and will allow them to modernize that operation. So from that perspective, this would be an improvement on an existing business that's already on the west side of Broadway, but in a I would say less than modern operational facility right now. And what they're trying to do is expand and modernize what they have.
Agreed. I understand from a business standpoint, that definitely would be a good idea for the business. I was just thinking about for our city and for what I'm trying to see what our city is going to become. I'm having an issue with the whole point of having, now this is coming on the other side of Broadway, and to where now we have these facilities here. And like I said, it looks like a great facility from what I'm looking at with how they want to set everything up. Again, with the CDC bringing in the new housing on that side, and again, charging the amount of money that they will be charging for that, this is going to impact that area, correct? So if that's the case, then why would we want to bring in something that's going to basically lower the impact? It's going to be our gateway to our community coming in, gateway to our city coming in from the south. And this is the first thing that our city, that people are going to see when coming to our city. It looks like it's going to be a great facility, but just for that area there, I know like the young man spoke earlier, where he spoke about that's definitely not residential area. It's more built for business and for commercial area. But if we're trying to do the things that we're doing in Reimagine Riviera Beach, that property, as I'm seeing it, could be used for other use, for beautification for our city, because that's all we've been talking about for the past 2 or 3 years, as far as beautification for our city. And I was just wondering, coming from a city standpoint and what we want to do in our city, I'm just finding it hard for the city to recommend what they're trying to bring to our city, which I understand the business aspect of it, but I'm just strongly having an issue with, if this is something we're bringing to our city, are we trying to grow as a city, or now we just becoming I guess a storage for boats on Broadway, and now pushing the people to the west? And is this something that's satisfactory by our community? That's what I'm more concerned about. Because I was talking to, when Reimagine Riviera Beach first came about, the ideas that I heard from the city manager and the ideas I heard from some of the council was that this is what our plans are going to be, and to make this beautiful so the residents can have this and we can have that, and we have all these nice things in our city. But the last couple of things that's come to our board was what? Warehouses and boats, right? Which is nothing that's going to really benefit the community. If this is going to be a service plaza, right? And I understand boats have to be fixed. You were talking about now we're going to have a noise situation where we're building $300,000 houses or condos, apartments, and then we're going to have somewhere where they're building on boats. And then I'm looking at the road there, and I didn't want to interrupt it then, but I'm looking at the road, and it seemed like if you're going to be bringing boats in and out, those roads definitely don't seem big enough for safety reasons for the neighborhood, for these boats to be going in and out of this community safely, because the roads will have to be specifically wider. They will be coming off Broadway. And then you since you can't have an entrance on Broadway, you're going to have to turn down either 11th or 12th and then make the entrance in there. And those roads are nowhere close to being wide enough, let alone for our cars, let alone boats. And that was a major concern just as far as safety for myself. We talked about the border, far as putting up the walls, and we were saying that legally, you said 8 foot or 6 foot.
6 is the maximum in that
6.
area.
Now, how tall are the boats?
Pretty big.
Right, they're going to be taller than 6, correct? I can assume, right? Because they're going to be low size boats, and I think that's why Ms. Shepherd was asking that question. So again, if we're coming out of that residential area and that on the west side, we definitely don't want to come out and look at boats. If we had a wall that was big enough or was tall enough to where, and he had plants and the nice palm trees on the outside, that wouldn't be so much of an eyesore. But to be able to come out, and then those residences that will be coming off, I think 11th and coming up, now you're gonna have to deal with the interference of the boats on both streets coming in and out. I think it's gonna be a bit of an issue. That's why I'm kind of understanding for the city's recommendation for this about how it's going to impact that area. Because I think that for myself, I think we should have changed the rezone of that area a long time ago.
Mr. Chair?
Chair,
Absolutely.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
And that was something that I've been having an issue with ever since I've been on this zoning board. Also, I have an issue with right there on 10th, between 11th and 10th, you got residential area there, but it's zoned for downtown industrial. Why do we keep bringing in all these warehouses and boats and stuff without changing these zones first? Where are we on that anyway? Updating the zone in the city. This stuff needs to be changed, needs to be updated before we let businesses just keep coming in and coming in and coming in. It doesn't make any sense. We're defeating the purpose.
And I think that's, excuse me, sir, again, because that's what I was alluding to there in that situation, because given what we spoke about at Riviera, or Reimagine Riviera Beach, at that point, when we decided we were going to reimagine Riviera Beach, we were thinking the idea that we would go through and rezone this at that time. Because right now we have this company coming in with these great ideas of what they want to do, and they're absolutely positively right in what they want to do because they're going by what it's zoned as. But we can't stop them from coming in here to actually to enhance their business. But if we keep it zoned that way, but if we had a plan on reimagine Riviera Beach, we should have changed it a long time ago.
Mr. Warley?
Yes, sir.
The point you just made is what Mr. Neil De Jesus said. He said, Wayne, the city zoned this. Their comp plan called for this, and this is why we acquired and assembled all of these individual, well, about 3 or 4 purchases. There weren't 17 purchases, but because of the comp plan and because of your future land use and your zoning, you're exactly correct. And it's not that we're trying to do this. The city had years of charrettes. The city has a published comp plan. The city's advertised it to the world. This is what the city wants. This is what we want. So accordingly, he and the client went out and they purchased the land. They assembled the land, they assembled the team, and they prepared a phenomenal package consistent with what the Planning and Zoning Board approved. Because you had to approve the zoning, you had to approve the comp plan. So you're correct. You're 100% on point. This is the city's flying a flag saying, this is what we want along the Broadway corridor. They don't want it along Avenue F, G, or H, but along the corridor. And it's worked. This is why you're seeing these marine uses come, because you have called for it. You've asked for it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I stand corrected. What charrettes? Because I've been at all the charrettes.
You were there. I saw you there.
Okay, so please explain to me.
This is when
What-
we had the different.
Charrettes, so we're talking
This is when we had
about,
the different CR, this is before the comp plan. The charrettes were done to change the comp plan. That's we attended all those lengthy meetings with the different CRA directors over the years. All the different CRA directors that, you were there for all of them.
I was there.
But this is your comp plan. This is your zoning plan. And the zoning board approved it, the city council approved it, and the business community is listening to what you're asking for.
Attorney Richards, I'm going to stop right here because I understand the comp plan. I understand the zoning, I understand it. But the residents are outraged. Now, this is going to be something coming to city council, and they're outraged that we did Lakeview, because Viking and Safe Harbor, they were there. It's nothing I could really say to do. Yeah. But now we're coming across the street, and it's like you're shoving this down our throat. We got another boatyard in our neighborhood. I don't want to see any more boats because where I live at right now, the boats up and down my street. And that's what Ms. Clark and Mrs. Adderley is talking about. You're going to impact their life, their living. You're going to impact every day getting up, looking at these boats coming and going. And it's going to be noise. You're going to smell the fumes. I just don't see, I know I can't stop it. I know I can't stop it, but I want Channel 18 and these people to know, I understand that we are being forced to agree to something that I think is utterly ridiculous, that Mr. Gallen is right. You keep putting these warehouses in our neighborhood. Another day I passed down 8th Street and I'm like, did I really put my name to that? I asked him, I said, what did I sign my name to? He said,
Another
Ms.
warehouse.
Shepherd, look. And I'm like, oh my God, coming down 8th Street. I did that. So now I want people to understand that now here I'm about to do this all over again, Mr. Richard. I don't see it.
Well, this is a boat dealership.
It's about what?
This is a boat dealership.
I understand, but Viking is building a dealership. So now we got to sit here and watch in our neighborhood reimagine. I thought was reimagine that the whole downtown area will bring restaurants. That's what the people want. Shops. Now they're going to give us, well, planning and zoning, like we don't know the comprehensive plan. We said yes, let's put this in our neighborhood. It's not fair to us and it's not fair to them. She brought up a very good plan, which she should have submitted it to us, like everybody else come here and put all these papers and we read it.
Obviously, I can't speak to reimagine, Mr. Sermons can, but I think you're getting a lot of those restaurants. They're coming. You've seen them. But this is zoned appropriately for the property, and that's why we're here today.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I was able to locate the internet up for a moment. I was able to locate the public comment, and if it's okay, I'll read it now.
Yes, go ahead and proceed.
This is from a Miss Delphina Danzik. Attention Planning and Zoning. I am responding in opposition of approving the application ZA 22-0003, request from JS12 Real Estate Holding LLC, requesting a zoning map amendment to rezone the western portion of the subject property from the downtown general zoning district to the downtown core zoning district and providing for an effective and for other purposes. I am in opposition to approve site plan application number SP 22-001 to allow 30,403 square feet, two-story boat dealership with an outdoor boat storage area. The subject property is located at the southwest corner of the intersection of West 12th Street and the Broadway corridor, providing for an effective date and for other purposes. I am in opposition to approving the application ZA 22-0003, request from JS12 Real Estate Holding LLC, abandonment AB 23-0001 of the following right-of-way segments: the 20-foot alley right-of-ways, utility easements, and require right-of-way dedications along Broadway and Avenue E in Riviera Beach, Florida. I am the only homeowner who would have received the notification by mail, as my property would be negatively impacted by the commercial warehouse and storage. The applicant has not made any effort to speak directly with me, the owner. The other property owners are absentee landlords and marine mega companies. Besides, these residents of Riviera Beach have voiced their vote to place a moratorium on marine businesses, gas stations, warehouses, and liquor stores on Broadway, as the businesses are in direct conflict with Reimagine Riviera Beach and the comprehensive plan developments on Broadway Ave. I personally am opposed to being surrounded by more warehouses, marine businesses, large boats, trucks, crane equipment, traffic, chemicals, and increased commercial traffic in my family residential neighborhood. It will not be attracted or complement the gateway into the city of Riviera Beach, nor will it fit into complementing the Marina Village Phase 2, the new city hall, and will not be an anchor to attract economic development from restaurants, boutique stores, entertainment establishments, tourists, or tourism businesses. Another warehouse in a residential neighborhood will devalue my property, neighbor's property. The few families into the neighborhood will leave the Riviera Beach, causing families to be separated by municipalities. As we try to keep families bonded together, a marine warehouse will simply add more distractions and pollutions in the interest of our beautiful city. I request Planning and Zoning Board to vote no. D. Danzik. Thank you kindly.
Sermon, we should have got a copy of that letter. We should have.
Apologies, ma'am. We typically include these in the backup and noted in the presentation, and that was an error on my part. I beg your pardon for that.
Mr. Wiley, one final comment, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Well, I've been asked to remind this board that we're currently operating 2 blocks to the north on Broadway on the west side. This is on Broadway on the west side. So we're looking to move 2 blocks to the south. Still in the same corridor. That's all.
Right, well, that's understood.
Okay.
I think this is the understanding, and it may be a misunderstanding. Again, no one here, I think on the board, if I speak for all of us, that we're opposed to what the business is, and we appreciate you being here in our city, and you want to upgrade. We do understand that. but by the residents getting so excited, especially when the city manager came in about reimagine Riviera Beach, our ideas changed. We wanted to grow. We wanted the restaurants. We wanted these different things coming in. We wanted people to come in. We wanted bigger, different houses and condos and everything coming in. We all got excited about that. But again, by being on the planning and zoning board for the past 5 years, I'm noticing that only thing that we are approving are warehouses and warehouses and warehouses, and nothing else is coming to the city but that. It just seems as if, and I'm a school teacher by trade, and I motivate my kids to become better and become better and become better. So I understand what the dream is, but it's coming to be a nightmare for the city, because the people here want different things. And Mrs. Shepherd said it the best, that it's just that our anticipation of what we wanted in our city, this is not what it is. You see what I'm saying? And it has nothing to do with the great presentation that they brought up about the things they want to do here and how they want to upgrade their business and everything. It has nothing to do with that at all. It's just about what the people in our city expect to have and what we want to have in our city to see it grow. Because some of us here wants to see the progress. We do. But we want the progress to actually benefit the people at the same time and not hinder them by having a bunch of warehouses coming into our city. Because the warehouses, though, like you say, it's going to adversely hurt, the value. For example, the houses that'll be coming in, $300,000 houses, you can't sell them for $300,000. You have a boat service shop in front of it, right? I know that would make sense to me. I wouldn't purchase that.
Well, the servicing will be done inside the building, but let me.
Right, we understand it, but it still will be noise. And the mere fact that it will be there, like I said, if you could build a nice tall wall, 12-foot wall or whatever like that, and put nice palm trees around it and make it look really, really nice, that'll be something I can understand, because at least you're coming out looking at palm trees and nice green grass. But to be able to come out, to be able to see, like Mrs. Shepherd said, a warehouse. And that's what it's going to look like. And that's something that, again, it's been something that the people and everyone on the board can say this, the people who see us when we're in the city, that's the first thing that they're complaining about, is that they don't want any more warehouses. They don't want anything boat related anymore. They want other things to come into our city other than that.
Now is not the right time, but Mr. Sermons, I've been privy to significant residential and restaurants that are coming to that corridor as well. And I'm a little surprised you're not privy of that. I think you're going to see things very soon that comes before this board. But this use is zoned appropriately. It's zoned appropriately and the use is appropriate. But the good news is there's a lot of exciting things coming to that corridor. It's imminent. And it's exciting.
Mr. Richards, I've been hearing it for a long time now, and I just want to see it. Because my thing is that my idea would be more excited about it if I saw the restaurants being built, and then they said, "Hey, listen, let's build it. Let's put in a boat service down here." It's not going to impact the people that much, because we see the other positive. We are not seeing anything that we asked for first, but we're putting in everything else to satisfy every other group, but nothing that we asked for. And I think that's what the city is really a little upset about. So then, when are we going to see this? That's the thing I think the most people are gonna debate about.
I can't properly address that. I don't want to take your time, but it's coming. Mr. Sermons knows it, and you should see it. That should be shared with you, but it's coming. But once again, this use is appropriate for this land at this time. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Richard, you're a very smart man. You're very smart.
My wife might disagree.
I think she will say smart. You are privy to reimagine Riviera Beach. You're at the port. I know they've been talking to you.
I know it's coming, and I'm excited. And you should know.
Margaritaville is coming here. Okay, you have Margarita, the little boat. I'm sure more is coming. And here, we want people to get off that boat. And you think I want them to get off the boat and say, wow, this is a boat yard?
There's going to be a presentation that you won't know about yet, but it's tomorrow. It's going to blow people away. And it's not too far from it. There's synergies they're going to happen with cruise ships, with high rises, with mid rises, with restaurants. It's exciting. But this is not the proper time. But Some of us here know about them.
Proper time for
In this
you
room?
or proper time for us?
Oh, I can't discuss it now.
Oh,
I'm here for one reason and one reason only today.
and we're here
A
for the
client that
residents.
has purchased land consistent with what you have approved. That's all. That's all.
For boatyards?
Marina, yes, ma'am. That's why your city staff is recommending approval. That's not easy. It's not easy to get the staff to recommend approval. But they're recommending approval, and I sincerely hope that you would approve this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I do have another question for the applicant for JS12 Real Estate Holdings. Is your business affiliated with the JS Family Holdings?
No, we're not. JS being the Lexus people. Are those the Lexus people?
No,
Toyota
it's
Lexus?
JS Family Holdings. They own a lot of property in Broadway area as well.
No, absolutely not.
It's funny that they have the exact same name and both of you guys.
But
own
once
a lot
again,
of
they own the
property.
property 2 blocks to the north. That's where the current operation is.
Stan, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Concerns?
Thank you.
The one thing I would, well, Mr. Sermon, first I want to ask for, if you go to a vote on A, only if we agree, then we would go any further. But if we did not vote in favor of A, then everything else is pretty much null and void, is correct?
No, and Attorney Gatto can correct me if I'm wrong. You would need to vote on each item individually.
Right.
And make known your desire or desired recommendation to council for each item individually.
Right, but for A, if that's not approved, then you couldn't go any further if we didn't abandon that, correct?
Well, your vote would indicate to city council that you wish that they would deny the item. If you if your vote is to deny, then that would be communicated to city council that for this abandonment application, the Planning and Zoning Board recommends that you deny the request.
Mr. Given item A, by law, by rule, we couldn't deny that because that's what the city has this determined for that location, far as the right of way and how, because they're not in violation of anything by having that right of way, actually abandoning that. So technically by rule, they followed all the rules. We technically couldn't deny that anyway, correct?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
we cannot. This is the comprehensive plan that was set before the city. I don't think they should be penalized. They came in and they bought the property. That's their property. I cannot tell them what to build on their property. I wouldn't want them to come and tell me how to build my property. It's just, I want the city of Riviera Beach to know that we are here fighting for them. We understand Ms. Clark, we understand Ms. Adderley, we understand the city, but we cannot stand in the way of their, whether I like it or not, I can't stand in their way. That's my position on it.
Absolutely, that's what I was, and thank you for actually simplifying it for me. Because that's what I was basically saying, that they have the property, they own the property. The only thing we can't do with this is they followed all the rules. We can't punish them for them. So technically, by rule, we can't deny A because they've done everything they were supposed to do. In all due fairness, we would have to approve A.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I think the proper terminology would be, we don't have to recommend it to city council.
Right.
We most certainly can not recommend it. It's not that we can't deny. We send recommendations to council and we can do whatever we want to. Yes or no,
Right.
as far as the recommendation is concerned.
Got it.
She's absolutely correct.
Absolutely. So can you?
Absolutely correct.
Mr. Chair, if I may
Yes.
provide some clarity on this. So she's absolutely right. This board sits in an advisory capacity for all of these items. So you're merely making a recommendation to city council. For all of these items, when they go before city council, they're quasi judicial. So what that means is the city has set out criteria for each of these applications. And the application, and that's what the staff report does, it addresses each of the criteria, and staff makes its recommendation about whether or not they've satisfied all the criteria. So for each of these applications, they go before city council with your recommendation in the staff report, and then the city council has to sit in that quasi-judicial status and determine, has the applicant satisfied all the criteria? And if they make that determination that they have satisfied all the criteria, unless they have substantial competent evidence to the contrary, they do have to approve it. So that is, she's right, it's a recommendation at this stage. When it gets to city council, it's quasi judicial.
Well,
For the-
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
When we did the quasi judicial, all of us up here said no with Lone Pine. Then it got back to city council, it was overturned. And then I'm listening that you all are getting into something else, you needed some more votes or whatever. And it's kind of mind boggling when planning and zoning say no, and then council, they have the right, that's their right. But I just believe in going by the code. I do. Can we deny it? Of course. And I get it. But it's coming to the point that the city, they bought the property, come in, and Mr. Sherman say, well, let's approve it. And then planning and zoning get the backlash of it all. So I just want to go on record that I definitely understand. I don't want to stand in their way. And I think that I would like to see my councilwoman decide this particular project. But at this point, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, that we don't have any choice but to go ahead and prove it and let it go on to council.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I will say that some of the, in your recommendations to city council, one of the areas where you are very impactful and powerful as a board is what conditions ride with it. So residents did express tonight that even if the zoning allows this, they rather see a wall as opposed to aluminum fence.
Right.
So something like that can be conditioned by this board in consideration of what you've heard tonight. And we could add to it saying that, or in our staff report to city council state that the planning and zoning board recommended X with the condition that a 6-foot masonry wall must be erected along Avenue E or something to that effect. But anything that you heard tonight that would improve the quality of life for those around it are within reason are things that you could send as recommendations to city council.
Got it. Thank you. And thanks a lot, legal, for explaining that, because I wanted the people to be able to hear exactly what the explanation was and how our decisions are impacted by that, because we have to follow the rules and regulations of what what they're bringing to the community, but we still have to follow the rules by what we can do, and like I say, and give it to the council for final decision. So we'd like to go to a vote.
Can we vote?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
one more thing. Ms. Clark keep raising her hand, and out of respect for her of serving, can you allow her to say whatever is burning?
Is that okay, Mr. Sermon?
I have no issue unless there's a legal issue with that.
It's okay?
Your chair.
3 minutes? 3 minutes, you all to 2.
Very quick. And I really appreciate the board hearing me out. I want you to know that when I came here earlier and spoke, I have been speaking with the city manager, CRA, residents, trying to get my arms around this. Ms. Shepherd is absolutely right. They purchased the land. There's not a lot that we can do. And I had to sit and figure out what can we do to coexist and put those conditions in there? The applicant said just a wall on E Avenue. Well, that wasn't quite sufficient for me because again, Lakeview or Lakeside,
Lakeview Park.
Lakeview Park, that area is up against the same scenario. But their applicant is really hearing them out and putting those conditions and that those applicants are adhering to that. So I would like this applicant, again, to rethink not partial wall, but 3 or 4 walls. If they want to put a link fence on Broadway, that's up to them. That I don't care. The entrance on E Avenue directly affects us residents. It could be a partial wall. Of course, they can have a fence that opens up and let the boats in, whatever. I just want them to take us in consideration and really speak with us. The comprehensive plan, as we know, is going through a revision, and residents have said something entirely different than what the comprehensive plan was 10, 15 years ago. The same thing for the residents. Whoever attended those charrettes, they're probably long gone, but we're still here, and our investment is still here. And I'm asking the applicant, just as much as the Lakeview area, to take us in consideration and bring us to the table and let us talk. We here as residents to be a partner. We have a different discussion. Mr. Wiley, you're right. What is it that we want to be when we grow up with that Broadway corridor? Mrs. Shepherd is right. All of this new development is coming, are we going to be entertainment restaurants to marina? The attorney says, hold to your seats, hold tight, some good things are happening. And I appreciate that, but we just want to see shovels in the ground and come back to him and say, hey, what you said, in fact, took place. We're in a quandary of an unknown right now. But right now, we just have the applicant. They bought the land. They paid significant amount of money for it. How can we coexist? Because as well as I know, once this gets to city council, it's a whole different ball game of their decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know one problem I see. A 6-foot wall is not going to do it.
That's what it's not. If that would be an adjustment, as my colleague just stated, a 6-foot wall, again, wouldn't be enough, but legally, that's the highest we can go, Mr. Sermon?
Yes, that's the highest that the code allows.
So I guess that's a no.
Mr. Chair.
If I may.
How high is the wall at Safe Harbor? Because I think that wall at Safe Harbor is a little taller than 6 feet, isn't it?
Sorry, I would have to verify. I don't believe it's higher than 6 feet. 8 foot is allowed in industrial areas. That area is not zoned industrial, but I can double check to make sure I'm not misstating anything on the record.
Okay. Just checking. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No problem. Thank you. I hear what you're saying, and I think we certainly want to try to work with the community too. I think that there is that limitation of 6 feet, and maybe an alternative that we can consider is looking at using some more landscape material. Hedges aren't limited to that 6 foot maintained height. We could look at modifying our landscape plan in that area between now and council, and looking at, adding clusia hedge, doing something else around that sort of our western edge of our property. I think maintaining the wall is fine on that western property line, adding the hedging in, and then how we can add that up on 11th and 12th in the appropriate places could be a good compromise, something that we could bring in. It is limited amount of space. If you put a wall in there, then you're even further eliminating the opportunity to soften that impact with landscape. So I think there's a good solution. You see that used very often and very effectively. It blocks out light, it blocks out noise. We can still put the fence in, but we can then really screen that away and do a hedge material that maybe we can look at maintaining it at a higher height. So again, I think that's a compromise we'd be more than willing to look at and try to work through with staff.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, sir.
would the applicant be open to considering a berm under the fence? So if there's a, say, 2-foot berm, and then the fence is on top of that, that could be a better screen for considering the height of the boats?
Unfortunately, there's not going to be enough width to get the berm. So that really, because we're limited, we can't do grading off our property. And so the space that's going to be allowed, or space between the property line and the parking lots or the area that's developed on the property, to get 2 feet, you're going to need like 15 feet of width to actually burn that up at a reasonable slope. Otherwise, then you're talking about retaining walls and different things that is going to be frankly less attractive than us being able to go in and install maybe larger material from the get-go and then being able to maintain that at a higher height.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
he touched on something that we did not touch on. How many parking spaces are we talking about now?
Code required, minimum. We didn't overpark this by any means, I think, by the calculation. So there's not a specific calculation for a boat dealership within Riviera Beaches Code. So we have to break our building down into the different components that it's made up of. So I think in total, we're required 76, and we're providing 76, right on the nose.
How many disabled parking?
Whatever's required by the Florida statute, I believe it's 76. I think we are required 3. I have the plan if you give me a moment, but I'm almost positive we're at 3.
There's 3 on the site plan.
Okay, and you guys are not sharp tonight. You did not ask about jobs. Something's
Yeah.
wrong tonight, guys. You usually jump on jobs. What?
It was in the presentation.
Oh, well, oh, okay.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chair. Yes, I did recall getting direction from the board chair who's not present about including the job-related condition on projects that have the potential to generate significant jobs. So staff included that based on that previous direction from this board.
Okay, I remember it in the presentation, but you all used to hammer away at that job thing.
Correct.
So they read it. I
Correct.
did remember it, but I think you all kind of skimmed over it a little bit and then discussed it.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
no problem. So can we go ahead and go to a vote?
Yes, let's call the question.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I know the vote on this, the current item on the floor is the abandonment. When you get to voting on the subsequent items, especially the site plan, if there's any conditions that you would like staff to include and forward to council, I would just ask that you state those so we can ensure they're documented and included in the staff report.
Got it.
I don't understand that. Can you repeat it, Mr. Sherman? I really didn't get it. Your voice is kind of soft.
I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. The item that's been read into the record right now is the abandonment application. So I know you'll be taking a vote on that. Afterwards, the clerk will read the subsequent items. When we get to the site plan, if there's any additional conditions that you would like to add, please just make sure that's stated as a part of your motion so that we can include it in the staff report.
Can we go to a vote?
Roll call for item number 7A. Anthony Brown?
We gotta do a motion? Is there a motion?
I'm sorry, is there a motion?
Okay, we have a motion to approve section 7A. Okay, the ordinance of the city council of Riviera Beach, you want me to read in its entirety? That's okay?
No, you did okay. I was just picking it.
Oh,
7A is the abandonment.
right, so we're approving 7A, correct?
All right, so let me go ahead and read the item.
Yes.
Item 7A, an ordinance of the City Council of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving a request from JS 12 Real Estate Holdings LLC applicant requesting an abandonment AB 230001 of the following right-of-way segment, the plus-minus 20-foot alley, right-of-way, utilities easement, and required right-of-way dedications along Broadway and Avenue E in Revere Beach, Florida, Attachment A, and providing for an effective date and for other purposes.
Move.
Second.
Anthony Brown.
Yes.
Renee Burgess.
No.
James Gallen.
No.
Margaret Shepherd.
Yes.
William Wiley.
Yes.
That item passed with Renee Burgess and James Gallen dissenting. Item 7B, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Revere Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving a replat, application number P8230003 from JS 12 Real Estate Holdings LLC applicant for a request of a major site plan approval. The subject property is located at the southwest corner of the intersection of West 12th Street and the Broadway corridor, providing for an effective date and for other purposes.
Do we have any comment cards on this item?
No, sir. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I found a couple typographical errors on it, so
Yes, sir, go ahead.
for those also.
On the site plan?
The replat, minor errors. I just hand it off to staff as usual, if it's approved.
So the board would be requesting a condition that the mentioned typographical errors be corrected before this moves before city council? Understood. We can include that.
Is there a motion?
Second,
Mr. Brown?
yes.
Renee Burgess?
No.
James Gallen?
No.
Margaret Shepherd?
Yes.
William Wiley?
Yes.
That motion passed with Ms. Burgess and Mr. Gallen dissenting. Item 7C, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Revere Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving an application ZA 220003 from JS 12 Real Estate Holdings LLC applicant, requesting a zoning map amendment to rezone the western portion of the subject property from the Downtown General DG zoning district to the Downtown Core DC zoning district, and providing for an effective date and for other purposes.
Move.
Second,
Mr. Brown?
yes.
Mr. Burgess?
No.
Mr. Gallen?
No.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
That motion passed with Mr. Burgess and Mr. Gallen dissenting. Item 7D, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Revere Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving site plan application number SB 22-0012 to allow a plus-minus 30,403 square foot, two-story boat dealership with an outdoor boat storage area. The subject property is located at the southwest corner of the intersection of West 12th Street and the Broadway corridor, providing for an effective date and for other purposes. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second,
Mr. Brown?
yes.
Ms. Burgess?
No.
Mr. Gallen?
No.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
That motion passed with Ms. Burgess and Mr. Gallen dissenting. Item 7E.
Hold, 1 second. Did the board, do we have any, for that, I know it's just got approved, but do we have any conditions for that? Because that's the one I think Mr. Sherman was talking about for the site plan. So do we have any recommendations of what we would need for that? For item D? Any suggestions?
He just stated in the motion.
Right, it's been moved and seconded and approved.
Yeah.
We've called the vote.
Okay, let's proceed.
Item 7E, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending Chapter 28, Signs of the Land Development Code of the City of Riviera Beach at Article 1, Section 28-1, to update definitions, Section 28-5, prohibited signs to clarify regulations, Article 3, Section 28-109, to update language related to temporary signs, providing for conflicts, severability, and effective date and other purposes.
Mr. Chair, we didn't go through item E yet.
And I am here to present that item for you before you
okay.
take a vote. So on this item, as you'll see in your backup materials, the staff is proposing this as a staff-initiated text change to the city's land development code as it relates to signs. Since this section of the code was adopted, there have been multiple changes in state law, federal law, and case law governing signage. And the primary one that we are attempting to address through this is the regulation of temporary signs based on their messaging. Courts have found that treating signs differently based on whether it's about, the temporary sign is about construction versus real estate or political signs, that is a infringement on freedom of speech. So because of that, it's necessary for us to update our land development code to treat all temporary signs the same. So as you'll see in here in the definition section, we are proposing to add the definition of election sign, remove the definition of political sign, and add the definition of temporary sign so that we can better use terminology that will allow us to treat them the same. Towards the end of the proposed text amendment, you'll see that the sections previously titled real estate signs and construction signs, that language has been stricken to make way for a section called temporary signs. And within that section, we will define temporary signs can include signs that talk about real estate sales or construction or political signs, but also listing the regulations that apply to them all together as one category called temporary signs. So that's the primary goal of this text amendment. It will allow us to, again, better regulate clutter and temporary signs, but also make sure that we're not discriminating on one type of sign messaging versus the others. So that's what we are proposing here, and staff is, as always, eager to answer any questions that you may have regarding this.
Here,
Yes, sir, proceed.
I was trying to find it. I ain't got to it yet, but what would be the time frame that the signs can stay up? Whether they're political, construction, or?
So the section on election signs provides more details on the time periods. So the proposed section C, during the 45-day period immediately preceding a local, state, or national election, temporary signs may be placed on residential property subject to the following limitations and requirements set forth below. And then there are 4 criteria under there that they must adhere to.
In 45 days?
That's correct.
Wow.
After?
A 45-day period immediately preceding. I don't believe there's language on, I don't know if there's language in here on when they must be removed. So that is something that could be considered as well.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing too, because
That's the problem.
that's become, one thing I don't want in the city of Riviera Beach is that, it's become an eyesore now. Because one thing that I actually thought about, Mr. Sherman, was actually having designated areas. I know it's a couple cities that had designated areas where you can only put political signs in those certain areas. So it's like 5 or 6 areas in the city, and bam, you put it there and that's it, rather than just cluttering the city up with signs. And like you say, having after an election and having signs there, the person responsible for putting the signs up should be responsible for removing the signs immediately. Because at that point, we don't want signs sitting around 2-3 months afterwards. Because I'm still seeing, I saw 2 signs. And election was almost 7 months, 8 months ago, whatever. But
That's a very good observation. So I can add a 5th criteria under here stating that the signs must be removed in,
within 2 weeks.
within 2 weeks
In
of
10
the,
days, yeah.
within 10.
10 business days.
10 calendar days from the end of the election.
10 to 2 weeks, right? 10 days to 2 weeks.
I
Mr.
think
Chair.
Yes,
So-
ma'am.
So are you going to penalize them, or how is this working?
so there's a section on violations as well that really gives more specific guidance to city code compliance on, and any city staff for that matter, on how they can enforce this if someone is not compliant.
Code enforcement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
For-
okay.
On
okay,
private
okay.
property,
Okay,
commercial
okay.
property.
Oh, you have a question here? Yes, sir.
It says temporary signs, the section, just before time and temperature. I guess you need some kind of space there.
I'm sorry. You said?
Temporary sign, that section.
Yes.
In the definitions here, just before where it says time and temperature,
Yes. Oh, yes,
You need some kind of space
you're
right there.
correct. I actually, when I was printing my document for this, I saw that same typo, so I'll make sure that's corrected before this gets further consideration from the council. But yes, I've noted that as well. So I have noted that for, based on page 13, what we've written for election signs on residential and non-residential property, we'll add a 5th criteria that the signs must be removed no more than 10 days post-election. And we'll probably make sure we add a clause based on there being a runoff election as well, that after the last election that's applicable to that candidate, that it must be removed in 10 days.
Perfect.
Were there any other considerations that the board would have staff make as we consider moving this before city council?
One other question I want to ask, and you know, I was politically involved with it, and I was a little confused on the process even then. Let me just ask you a question real quick. If, let's say, for example, you said residential signage, correct? Is that counting the property that they own or the part on the outside of the sidewalk that's closest to the street? Is that considered part of their residence, or is that public property?
You said on the opposite side
Like,
of the
like for
street from
example,
a
you have your
residence?
house and then you have your sidewalk that's there. And then on the sidewalk, right before you get to the street, that area there, even though that's deemed the property, they still deem that public property. So will that, the signs fall up under what rule? Will it be residential? Because I've had situations to where people were saying, I don't know, you know, what these signs are doing out here. And what would that area be deemed as?
So if it is in the right of way of the city, there are different regulations because at that point it's on public property.
Right.
This ordinance states that no temporary signs are allowed on city right of ways or any right of ways. The state also has prohibitions on these signs in their right of ways for the roads they own within our city. So this would be consistent with that in the right of way there, or as well as city property, that those temporary signs are not allowed. But for those who want to exercise their freedom of speech on their private property, it does provide for opportunities and guidance for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I want a clarification on that part.
And Mr. Sermons, can you tell me what page that's located on? Because in my packet, it says it started on page like 226. So I know I heard you say page 13, but
Oh, I apologize.
in this packet, I just want to, be clear as a property owner that I can place a sign of my choice in the yard for my political preference without being fined, or are private property owners going to be held to the same standards as we just mentioned about making sure that, a sign in my yard is removed within those 10 business days?
If you would give me a moment, I'll find the exact, you want the page that this strike through underline document starts on in the packet?
Yes,
Is that
that,
correct?
and then the question that I just asked. I don't need the page for the question I just asked. I just need to know if I'm going to be held to that standard as well. Or is that just for signs on public property?
The provision I mentioned does apply to all private property. So there is a section in this proposed amendment for residential property, and then a section for non-residential property, and it sets forth the guidelines for both. If I understand the request of the board correctly, whether it's commercial property or residential property, that the political signs would need to be removed no more than 10 days after the election occurs.
And I know we're doing the revision to the code, so it will be here, but how is the city going to make that known to residents going forward? Because everybody's not going to read the code. Everybody's not going to watch these meetings. So what is the plan come the next election if this goes to council and it's approved, to notify privately owned residents that, you put that sign in your yard, you have 10 days after the election to remove it?
So I have worked closely with the city clerk's office on this document, and they are preparing a information campaign related to these proposed changes, just to make sure the word is out on those requirements. For one, they have direct communications with the candidates because they have to state their candidacy, especially for city elections, and as they're applying, giving them the information on those requirements. But there is contemplated an information campaign that would accompany this if it's approved.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And
All right, I think Ms. Shepherd asked the question about what if they're not? What was the, we can repeat that as well. What's the outcome?
if there's violations of this section, okay, sorry, we're looking at page 203 of the packet is where the staff report starts for this. 205 is where the actual strike through underline begins. But for violations, we're proposing language that states any failure to comply with the foregoing temporary sign regulations may result in enforcement proceedings pursuant to Chapter 162 of Florida State Statutes or Chapter 2, Article 6, Code Enforcement of the City's Code of Ordinances. The city may also pursue any other remedy available under the law. But primarily, it would be something like any other private property violation where it would be referred to code compliance, or once it's brought to the attention of code compliance, they would initiate a process starting with a notice of violation, communication and education with the owner of the property on the issue and how they can remedy it. And as with any of those processes, the goal is just to educate the homeowner and so they can bring their property into compliance. But the city can take more aggressive measures like going to the special magistrate and fines and things like that as well.
Like to propose the first time that it's just like a warning.
And That is, so the code process itself is, again, built on compliance. So usually the first step is not to even take them to the magistrate. Is, hey, here's a notice letting you know that there's a violation here. We'll come back in 30 days. Or depending on the issue, this one, it may be, 2 days just to make sure you've removed the sign and start from there. And if they're not gaining compliance from the property owner, that's when they may get a notice saying that you're required to appear at this hearing before the magistrate and things like that. Sometimes if it's something simple like a political sign, the officer may just knock on the door and say, hey, the election was 2 weeks ago. The rules state that these should be out. So if you, could just work with us and get this out of this. So our officers are community-based members, and they try to, build relationships with the property owners just to make the city a more appealing place to live.
Okay, sounds good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
so you're stating that my property, if I have a sign out there after election, I have to take the sign out of my yard? Is that what you're saying?
Based on what we're discussing tonight, if it's more than 10 days after the election, then yes, that sign would need to be removed. And after the 10th day, it would be an actual violation of an ordinance.
Not my Joe Biden sign now. You're not going to touch my sign.
Yes, ma'am, we won't
No,
touch
I'm
it.
just kidding. The sign is out there, so.
One other question also, and I don't mean to sound crazy or whatever, but you said, again, we have you said property owners, right? And one thing we do know in Riviera Beach that we do not have a lot of property owners. And what I mean is local property owners. For if someone's renting and you bring information up to a house or put a letter on the house and then state that, hey, we need this sign removed, and that person doesn't remove it, but that person does not own that house. So do you automatically contact the owner of the house and send that information to them, or this is just the person who lives in the house responsible for it?
We deal with property owners, so any.
So they would have to call and then tell the person to remove the sign.
Hermans, do you want me to address that issue?
Please.
So I represent the city's code compliance division. So any code case, the way it's initiated, it's always initiated to the property owner. We go to the property appraiser's website and then we get the information off of that. If the property owner doesn't live there, there's a mailing address. So we always tell them, list the mailing addresses where you really live, because then all the mail is going to go to you. If they list the mailing address as the property and they don't live at that property, that's where all the mail is going to go to. So then the tenant would be getting it. But what happens is the initial notice that goes out is a notice of violation. We mail it out, certified in regular mail, and then post it on the property. If they don't come into compliance within the time frame given in the notice of violation, we do a notice of non-compliance. That gets mailed out and posted on the property. If they still don't come into compliance, we do a notice of hearing to go to the magistrate. That gets mailed out and that gets posted at the property. Then they have a hearing date before the magistrate. When they come before the magistrate has to give them additional time to come into compliance. So in code enforcement, you always get 2 free bites at the apples before there's any fines imposed. So there's multiple mailings, there's multiple postings at the property. Unfortunately, if you're an absentee landlord and you are not in communication with your tenant and you're not going by there, you may not get notice of this, but we do those notices which are required by law. But there's so many, and it's really infrequent that the owner doesn't know somehow that these notices are coming. So, and with the sign, it's pretty easy compliance. So ideally, if the tenant abides by the law in any respect, they'll just remove the sign. That's usually not going to be our biggest issues that we're going to be dealing with.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
They threw all my signs away, so I didn't have a chance to get mine. They just, you were lucky you got your signs.
Well, I would say part of the education that would be staff's responsibility is making sure persons understand the right of way versus their front yard. So if those signs are in the city's right of way, like you said, on the other side, the inside of that sidewalk closer to the street, usually that's the right of way, and city staff can just come and remove it off of city property.
Yes, they will.
Well, let me ask you, how long has that been in effect?
The right of way section, I'm not sure. The bulk of our sign code has been here since 1957, the original code of the city, but I would have to dig a little deeper to see if there was any additional language added along the way.
Thank you, sir.
Wow. Well, that concludes the staff presentation.
Motion?
Second?
All right, motion to approve section 7E
With the changes.
with the changes to the ordinance.
So move. You can do it now.
Is there a second?
Go ahead, Mr. Second.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Burgess?
Yes.
Mr. Gallen?
Yes.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
All right, let's go on to section 8, workshop items.
None, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's go on to section 9, general discussion. Public comments.
None, Mr. Chair.
All right, staff updates, which,
Chair,
yes, ma'am.
maybe Ms. Clark want to say her goodbyes to us.
Mrs. Clark, you want to come up and,
Publicly.
the first thing I would like to say also, first before Mrs. Clark speaks her piece, again, I would like to say thank you to her and Mr. Russell Barnes for giving a professionalism to our board and being able to, be a great team player and educating everyone on the board on the information and the knowledge that you guys have. So when I get a chance to see Mr. Barnes, I will tell him personally. But again, Mrs. Harris, again, from our numerous conversations, learning a lot from you, listening to your great outtakes. Thank you again from myself and also the board and the city of Riviera Beach.
I'd like to thank my colleagues, former colleagues. It was a tough decision for me to make. I really took my role here as a planning and zoning member very seriously, working for our residents to make our city a great city, which it is getting there. Do we have challenges? Yes, but do we have a bright future? Yes, as well. I thank each and every one of you for being supportive, encouraging me. Also, too, when I found myself in some difficult situations, Ms. Burgess was there to advise me because she sat right next to me, and I appreciate learning and growing from her and from each and every one of you. It's been a pleasure. I want to thank the staff so very much for the putting up with the phone calls, the question, and delivering things to me and reminding me about the meetings. And I'm going to really miss each and every one of you. The biggest thing I really want to say is to our residents, get involved here in the city of Riviera Beach. We have a lot of boards that we need volunteers for. We cannot move this city forward unless we have input from our residents. This was a blast, a learning experience, experience where I can take to other avenues, other channels. And I'm just asking again, the residents that to help us get to where we need to go as a city, Come and join the boards and get active. Your voice and your actions make a difference. And William, thank you so very much for having me come up. Ms. Shepherd, thank you very much for acknowledging me.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
I was just so very shocked to learn of your resignation. I mean, when I came in and I saw you sitting out in the audience, I was like, maybe she's just, waiting to come up. But where can we find you? Because I truly hope this is not the last that we will see or hear from you. I know you will continue to be an active voice in our community, but hopefully that decision was based on you doing bigger and better things.
One door closes and another one opens, and I say those blessings are the doors of God, and I have a tendency to walk through those doors because He knows what He has in store for me. And of course, I am so active in the city of Riviera Beach, and when this application comes before the city council, I will be there to make sure they're reminded of those conditions. So yes, I am very much invested in the city of Riviera Beach, and just in a different capacity. And I think from my years of service that the mayor and the commissioners, they always give me an open door, and I thank them for that. And thank you, each and every one of you.
Ms. Clark, may I say that the door is always open. I left for 2 years and I came back. There's one thing I know about people, they know good people and they will always drag you back. So don't think you're getting away, because one day you're gonna sound bored, and I know I could do better on that board. So that door is open.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going into the next phase of retirement, so I'm trying to figure out what that life is going to look like. But one thing I do know, I want to go do some traveling.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
9, staff update. So we made adjustments for that and did that first. So we go into correspondence.
So the only correspondences that we received were the resignation letters from both Mr. Barnes and Miss Evelyn Harris Clark.
Can we reject those?
I'm sorry?
Can we reject those? Yeah, those have been vetoed. Yes, so we'll see you next meeting, which is coming up next, which is August 24th. All right, do we have any planning and zoning board comments?
Chair. Mr. Shermans, I would like to know, where do we stand with the changing of zonings like we asked months ago? You don't really have to get into it now because it is 9 o'clock, but can you bring something to the next meeting to where we would know where we stand with these zones, because a lot of this stuff needs to be changed, and we need to stop letting these businesses come in here like this before the zones are changed or updated.
And I can just say quickly that we are really in the meat of that right now with the comp plan. But because those regulations go so far as being in the comp plan and the zoning code, it's arguable whether it's appropriate for staff to just say, hey, change this without the community weighing in, just like the community is the reason that it's there in the first place. Ms. Simon, who was next to me, who was leading our long-range planning, has been relentless in getting into the community to make sure that we get feedback from every corner of the city possible. You can find her at 2:00 in the afternoon going door to door, passing out surveys, soliciting the feedback from the community so that whatever is proposed for those changes to these elements of the comp plan is based on not only staff's thoughts, but also the members of the community. As you heard during the last staff update, the next citywide community meeting is on August 17th at the Wells Recreation Center, where again, we're making as many opportunities as possible in person, door to door, via surveys, and also online for persons to give feedback on what they want to see this plan change to be. So we can say that we are shaping what that next generation of the comp plan is going to look like. And it seems like sentiments may have changed, whereas, the community is no longer desirous of the marine industry being concentrated in that area of the city, and we can make sure we capture that and when this plan goes out. So that's where we are in it. And if you want anything more specific, I can definitely get with staff and we can get that to you.
Ms. Burgess, questions? Any suggestions or any comments?
At this time.
All right, yes, sir. All right, and just one clarification, just real quick, because I know you probably said this, but the sermon, again, as Mr. Richards spoke about the Reimagine Riviera Beach and the things that he says that should be coming soon, we should be all excited about. Though that area with Avenue E that we predicted on Reimagine Riviera Beach, are those areas now, as we speak, are they already been rezoned for future use for when we start Reimagine Riviera Beach? Have that's already been rezoned for that use? Or are we still waiting until that comes and then we make the change? Because again, we don't want another company to be able to come in and find a property that's zoned for industrial or warehouse or whatever, and then they come in and do the same thing as done today, far as following the rules, doing everything they're supposed to do, and then now buying the property and then putting something on there that our city may not desire.
I can say that at the moment, there are no proposed staff-initiated zone changes in the Avenue E area, or I don't think any lined up right now. In terms of applications from private development, I would have to review to make sure on Avenue E specifically, nothing comes to mind that's in the pipeline. There are some that we're reviewing on the Broadway corridor, and some in other parts of the city, but not Avenue E and none city-initiated zone changes at the moment.
So I'm just concerned because again, I don't want that situation to pop up in the city to where now people are going to be more and more disappointed, because now, as we said, we want to see the shovels in the ground for the new items or the new places or the restaurants and everything that's coming to the city. Again, we get all excited about it, but we don't see any movement. But we definitely don't want an issue to where more people start to come into the city, and because it was previously zoned to certain areas, someone else comes in and take that property. So again, I think the city should step in now and start pre-planning for this now and get it rezoned, just so no one will come in and make any changes.
What Mr. Sermons and I are talking about is sort of the legal issue of what you're asking about. The way things are currently zoned, part of it is based on what's in your comprehensive plan in terms of your land use designation flowing down to your zoning, which implements those land use designations. So to simply rezone may not be sufficient to accomplish some of the ideas that are with Reimagine Riviera Beach. But what Mr. Sermons just mentioned, which is a potential, is to request a moratorium on certain uses or certain types of development within a zoning category. Now, there's pros and cons to doing that, of putting sort of that stop in place, but you have to be careful when you do it and how you do it, because if someone has already acquired their parcels, then there's an argument that they have intended to develop under the current zoning. And if you change the zoning and that zoning results in sort of eliminating what they plan to use it for, or a down zoning, then they may have some claims regarding that change to basically what their realistic investment-backed expectation for the use of that property was. But I think, it sounds like then what needs to perhaps be looked at is whether or not some type of moratorium needs to be put in place, especially for a warehouse type use that's maybe perhaps adjacent to an up and coming residential development. But that's really what you're looking at. And that is certainly a policy decision that goes to the city council. But I think it's, normally when you're in the process of doing your comprehensive plan amendment, you're trying to get that public feedback. So then when you do your land use designations, your future land use, it takes in the public's perception and comments, and then that results in rezonings from there. So you're kind of in the midst of that process now, but the concern is now about the zoning. So your moratorium is really the only way to sort of try to put a stop to that while you're going through the comprehensive plan amendment, and then have everything line up based on those changes to your comprehensive plan.
Chair.
It's a lot to consider, and there's some legalities to it that could really, you could run afoul of. So I think staff would have to start looking at that, talk with the city manager, and see if come forward with a discussion on it. Yeah, generally you don't want to do a moratorium for more than 6 months, max maybe a year, depending on what the moratorium is. But that's, it doesn't give you much time in the sense of perhaps having to change both your comprehensive plan and their underlying zoning.
What about on issues like the one we had tonight where there is a residential area, but it's zoned for DI? Why can't that be changed now? What if a
So
person, what if they
the
come?
existing use is residential, but the current zoning, which is probably based on the future land use in your comprehensive plan for.
Yes, that's correct. That particular area, which is near where this development is, the future land use is actually.
Downtown industrial.
It's industrial, but the plan calls out it as a transition zone from the Port of Palm Beach to the residential areas north of it. And then the zoning is downtown industrial, which allows residential uses in a certain fashion, but not single family homes, which is the predominant land use in that area now. So there's a lot of non-conforming structures in that strip of blocks right there. So it is a challenging area of the city, to say the least.
How many more we have like that?
How many more districts such as that?
Yeah. That's where there's homes and you have it zoned for something else.
I would say that area and that district is very unique. And I don't believe there's anywhere else in the city where it exists at that scale, where there's dozens of single-family homes that are non-conforming with the zoning district, which is downtown industrial. It's meant for warehouses and mixed-use buildings that have offices that support the Port of Palm Beach, which is just 1 block south. So it's envisioned to be kind of a transition from the intensity of the port to the lesser residential uses that are further north, and that between 10th and 11th is just that really unique area of the city where it's envisioned that it transitioned, but there's still single-family homeowners there who are still passionate about their property. So it's a challenge.
So in the future, that means that somebody can come in and give them quite a bit of money and then build something else there that we don't want to see. So
Yes.
we still, gonna have the same problem.
Mr. Sherman, I have to put you on the spot one last time.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Richards spoke of these great things that are coming to the city of Riviera Beach. Can you elaborate on that?
Mr. Chair, I cannot. I can't state exactly what he was referring to.
Because he pointed at you.
I noticed that. I will say that any applications that are live on staff's desk, we'll absolutely can make those available and let you know what's in the pipeline. I'm not sure specifically what he was referring to, but again, if something is active, we'll definitely let you know. But right now in this particular area, we don't have any active applications other than what you just heard.
Thank you. So it seems like that'll be it for the next planning and zoning board comments. Simone, you would like to announce the meeting, or can I do that? Okay, upcoming planning and zoning board meeting be August 24th, 2023. And would like someone make a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.